Hello and welcome to The Take. I'm your host, Chesley McNeil. Each weekday, we're looking at stories, making headlines, and bringing experts from our community to give their take. Here's a look back at some of the top takes from this week and how those in the know are seeing those stories that impact you. The H-1B visa program is facing its biggest shakeup in years. Last week, President Trump signed off on changes to the program, the biggest being adding a $100,000 one-time fee to new applications, an enormous jump from the prior $2,000 to $5,000 scale. Amazon, Google, and Microsoft are warning employees abroad to return quickly, facing confusion over the new rules. California is weighing a lawsuit saying the fee hike could cripple Silicon Valley access to global talent. Even so, the president expressed optimism after signing the order.
You're very close to the technology CEOs. Are they concerned about that?
I think they're going to be very happy. Everyone's going to be happy. And we're going to be able to keep people in our country that are going to be very productive people. And in many cases, these companies are going to pay a lot of money for that.
All right. Despite the president's Oval Office is praising it a little bit here, everyone in the tech world is just not on board with this. Time to bring in Harley Littman. He is the CEO and founder of Genesis 10, one of the largest IT staffing firms in the U.S. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. You're backing this move. Tell us why.
For two reasons. I think, one, there are Americans who could do this work. And what President Trump is trying to do is to protect the American worker, and secondarily is to keep knowledge here in the United States. I think these are two big themes. What happens is American companies don't really engage in training much anymore. After the last Great Recession, training went out the window in corporate America among the Fortune 500. And I think that American companies need to embrace training once again because American talent is here. So they went overseas for labor, but it really cost them more than they think. You know, sometimes they look at the labor rate, the dollar rate, and they say, oh, it's less than what they pay Americans, which presents other problems because they're undercutting American wages, which President Trump feels is unfair. But when you really add it up, when you consider the cost of the visa, the transportation from overseas countries, it ends up in the hidden costs, the indirect costs. These people often don't get hired, they go back home. That knowledge goes back home, you lose that knowledge, when more likely an American would stay here and you would retain that knowledge. You pay a bigger price in productivity and in cost than you may realize.
So you call this a need for correction, and you talk about the cost. So is that why you believe that $100,000 fee is ultimately good for the United States workforce?
Yes, because this will prevent people coming in and undercutting American wages. Now, if they spend $100,000, they're truly bringing in a very high quality, talented individual that is probably appropriate to work here in the United States. But too often they're bringing in low-skilled, entry-level Java developers or other skills in technology that Americans could have. And frankly, at the end of the day, the President of the United States was elected to protect Americans and to enhance the American way of life. And you can't do that better than helping them keep their jobs. You know, hundreds of thousands of Americans were fired from their job when work went offshore for cheaper labor. So this is a correction to that.
So what about those smaller companies, right? You think they can be able to adapt to the cost easier than some of these larger firms like Amazon and Microsoft?
They all have the same solution. There are companies like mine and many other good firms that train people out of college and do it very quickly. They put them in an intensive boot camp and they get these people up to speed really quickly. They're entry level, most of them. Some are more senior and you could upskill. But as boring as it sounds, it's not sexy, but training is the answer. And it keeps the knowledge here. The other reason is if you give work to people from foreign countries, invariably they go home at some point, most of them. And they've learned new ideas, startups are created, innovation is created in overseas countries. So who benefits from that? Not America. In fact, while America may be the leading technology country in the world, that edge is being eroded because of all the internet startups in countries all over the world. So to maintain our leading edge, which again falls under the leadership of the President of the United States. This will help maintain our technological leadership, which is very important for this country.
Harley Littman, really appreciate your insight on this. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Well, TikTok apparently isn't just for teenagers to make and watch short dance videos. A Pew Research Center survey finds a fifth of U.S. adults now get their news on a regular basis from TikTok. That's up only 3% from 2020. For young adults under 30 years of age, 43% turn to TikTok for news, and roughly a quarter of the people from 30 to 50 years of age say they mainly get their news from the platform. That's a growing reliance on TikTok. That comes as the president has signed an executive order reshaping who controls it. Here to examine what comes next for the app and its 170 million users here in the U.S. is Rome Chalapa. He's the University Emory Professor of Information Systems and Operations Management. Ram, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Now, how significant is this executive order in reshaping just, how TikTok, the way that U.S. regulators handle a foreign tech platform?
Well, it's actually a very interesting approach. I don't think we've seen this before. We have now had the government say that a few particular investors will be owners of TikTok, about 45%. And the Chinese investors and the Chinese government will own kind of the rest of it. So it's a very unique action that has been taken in order to kind of manage and take care of some of the issues with the platform.
Would you see it as a good thing or bad thing?
Well, I don't know whether anointing certain investors to manage is a good thing, but the idea that we need to have some semblance of an understanding of platforms that have essentially become news organizations, that in itself is not a bad thing.
Now, yeah, you mentioned that. The Pew study that we just read says 1 in 5 Americans now regularly get their news from TikTok. How does U.S. control of the platform potentially affect the type of news that users will see?
Well, I don't know if it is actually going to directly impact. The idea is that essentially the algorithm is now available and transparent on the US side of things. So if anything nefarious were to happen, like what the complaints we had during the previous election with sort of the Russian bots and so on, those kinds of components can at least be audited and brought to question. I don't think these investors are going to sit and rewrite the algorithms. All algorithms are focused on targeting the bubble. Essentially, they want to make sure that advertising dollars are maximized more than anything else.
All right, so you talk about advertising dollars. What about misinformation? Talk to me about that. Does tighter U.S. control kind of minimize that, or does it become just more politicized, do you think?
I don't think that really regulation can handle misinformation directly. I mean, by the time it's discovered what is considered misinformation, the definition of misinformation, all these are quite complex topics, and I don't think we can fix these things through these mechanisms.
All right, so let's talk about the younger audience then, right? How might the heavy reliance on TikTok for news impact some of these changes?
Well, I don't believe that the end users are going to see much of a difference. Where there might be implications, it might be to do with the fact that the data might be sitting inside the US. And this we can see with many other countries as well, is that even when multinationals operate and have data about the citizens of those countries, it is often required that the data is held in a data center within that particular nation. And so we might see some of that. So maybe the access to information and the storage of information, that might be contained within. But an average end user is not going to see much of a difference.
And I'm sure a lot of them hope they will not. All right, so, there's still some uncertainty whether or not, I guess, TikTok will stay here in America. Where do you fall on that line? Do you think that its days are numbered, or it'll be around?
I think they're going to strike a deal. That would be my guess. I don't think they would want to give up the market that we have, and there may be some middle ground as to what percentage and who will own it. I think that will still be discussed, but I'm pretty sure some deal will be struck.
Okay, Professor Chalapa, really thank you for your insight. Really appreciate it. A lot of people want to know about this. I'm sure we'll have you back on to talk more about it.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. All right, right now, a new potential treatment for autism is generating a lot of attention. It's called Leucovorin. I believe that's the way you say it. It's a form of a folinic acid already being used in cancer care, but new studies suggest it could improve communication and behavior in some children on the spectrum. The FDA recently took steps to expand the use, but experts caution the research is still in its early stages. Joining us now is Dr. Cecil Bennett. He's from the Noonan Family Medicine to help us sort this thing out and what it all means for us. Dr. Bennett, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, so for people hearing about this, and I hope I'm saying it right, it's Leucovorin, right?
Leucovorin, correct.
Leucovorin. Tell us about it.
Well, first of all, we know that autism is a disease characterized by language delay. Folic acid is a vitamin that actually plays a role in the development of language in children. For some reason, children with autism cannot process and metabolize folic acid, and therefore they have language delay issues or language developmental issues. Leucovorin, or folinic acid, is a metabolite of folic acid. It's able to go across the blood-brain barrier to those language centers, and we've seen in 2 small studies that it actually has improved the language skills in children with autism. We should note, though, that this is an off-label use. As you mentioned, the drug was initially approved for use to treat side effects in patients taking chemotherapy. So this would be an off-label use of the drug.
So how is this different from I mean, I think people take folic acid as a supplement, right? Is this one different than that?
This is the difference is that children with autism, or at least some children, have issues in processing that folic acid. Folic acid needs to get into the brain or across the blood-brain barrier and get to those language centers. And in kids with autism, it cannot get across the membrane. But folinic acid, which is a derivative or metabolite of folic acid, actually can cross. So we're finding that folinic acid actually can improve language skills in children with autism.
So there are some studies showing some improvement. What do we know about those?
Well, here's the thing, all right? There have been 2 small-scale studies, the most being as many as 80 participants. It's been promising. Children have improved. The reason why we need a larger trial or phase 3 trial is that there's a lot more data that we need. With a trial with only 80 participants, we don't really know what's the correct dose. How high can we go? How high is toxicity? What ages do we start at? What weight do we start at? Does it last for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years? This is why long-term studies are necessary, but I can fully understand why the FDA moved forward to approve this drug off-label. Well, really it's not approving it off-label, but allowing it to be used off-label, because it is looking promising in children who have autism and language issues. Of
course, that's good news for folks who suffer from this, obviously, but you got to think about the side effects as well. Are there any side effects that we know about?
And that's the problem, right? We only have small studies with as many as 80 participants. A phase 3 trial will have as many as 800 participants. We'll have a bigger pool and we'll have a better idea of any type of toxicity. This is why larger trials are necessary. And I know parents get upset sometimes when drugs may seem to be promising and the FDA delays, but believe me, these large-scale trials provides a tremendous amount of information and can only keep our children safe if they're done correctly.
I was going to ask you that. You practice family medicine. Folks come run into your office. They hear about this new drug and this new treatment. They come to you and you say it, and you have to now kind of calm down. What do you say to them?
Again, I'm going to, in this case, because of the initial studies, for any of my children who do have autism, I would use it cautiously because of what I'm seeing in the science, but very cautiously. I really need to see bigger studies in order to be more comfortable in using the drug.
Well, we've got 30 seconds left. Anything you want our viewers to know about this, I'm going to say, exciting new information?
This is something that we should know, that we should be careful if Big Pharma studies this drug, because if they study this drug and do the phase 3 trial and bring it to market, it's going to be a branded drug, and all of a sudden the cost may shoot up by 1,000-fold because they did the research. So it's very important that the CDC or the FDA or the NIH actually takes the lead in doing this research, that Big Pharma doesn't come along and all of a sudden this drug that was easily accessible becomes inaccessible to children who have autism.
Gotcha. Dr. Cecil Bennett, thanks so much for your insight today. Thanks for joining us. Rheumatic disease, including arthritis, remains one of Georgia's biggest health burdens, affecting millions, limiting daily life, and putting a strain on a short supply of specialists. Data from the Arthritis Foundation found that nearly 1 in 4 people in Georgia, that's roughly 2.6 million, are today living with arthritis. Nearly half of those affected say arthritis limits what they can do each day. By the year 2040, that number is projected to be soar even higher as Georgians' populations gets older and health demands continue to grow. Let's examine these numbers. Bring in Dr. Douglas White to talk all about this. So glad you are joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
All right, we said nearly 1 in 4 adults in Georgia reporting arthritis. How does that translate into what we're seeing on a day-to-day, what you're seeing day-to-day in your practice?
An increasing number of patients who are looking for subspecialty care in rheumatology. And of course, you combine that with the shortage in specialists, including rheumatologists that you already mentioned across the country and including here in Georgia. And it translates into long lines to get in to see a rheumatologist and long drives to get in to see a rheumatologist. Slows down access to care, and it's a problem that we've been battling for some time and are working very hard to solve.
What would you say is the biggest complaint that you hear from patients who suffer from this disease in their daily lives?
Well, so rheumatologists take care of these big systemic inflammatory disorders, right? So where the immune system that is normally protecting you from germs has now decided to cause inflammation for reasons we don't really understand in a number of organs around the body. But probably the most common site in the body where patients feel these conditions is in their joints. And so we become known as arthritis doctors. And for sure, some of the most prevalent diseases we take care of, like rheumatoid arthritis, predominantly affect the joints, in addition to other organs. But, you know, the patients usually at the beginning notice pain and stiffness, a lot of times in the hands and wrists and feet, sometimes knees and hips, all kinds of different joints all over the body. But in particular, in rheumatoid arthritis, a lot of times it starts in the hands and wrists. Seems to get better with heat, better with activity, and that's in contrast to some of the other wear and tear types of arthritis that get worse the more you use them. The rheumatoid arthritis patients feel better with movement. And a lot of times that's what they come into the clinic with. That alongside of significant amount of fatigue is another huge problem in these conditions. Patients walk around feeling like they have the flu all the time and they're exhausted.
Is this hereditary?
It is. It's not completely hereditary. We have pretty good data, at least in Caucasians. Most of this from the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, where the risk of developing rheumatoid arthritis sometime in your life it seems to be about 4-fold higher than the general population if your mom or your dad or your son or your daughter or a brother or a sister, in other words, a first-degree family member, also has rheumatoid arthritis. So there's clearly a familial component to it. There's a genetic component to it. But the current theory is that there has to be something in the environment to trigger it in a genetically susceptible individual. And so we think that the kind of the underpinnings of this revving up of the immune system is there from a very early age, and then it starts to slowly develop over time, even before the patients have symptoms. And of course, we're trying to identify these patients as quickly as we can with testing and early referrals, because when we can intervene early, the treatments work so much better.
Doc, when you say trying to get it early, right? What are some of those signs that we should be looking for that maybe we think is the onset of this?
Well, I think anybody with arthritis symptoms in their hands and wrists needs to think about it a little bit, especially when there's swelling in the joints, stiffness, especially when there's a strong morning predominance to their symptoms. A lot of rheumatoid arthritis patients will describe how much better they feel with heat. That's another really interesting sign that really seems to distinguish rheumatoid arthritis and other types of inflammatory arthritis from the wear and tear arthritis. And so we like to have the opportunity to screen those patients with exams and a deeper history and some blood work and sometimes even some imaging to see whether or not we can find evidence of early arthritis before it's obvious, early rheumatoid arthritis especially. And then we can offer those patients therapy and sometimes abort the disease early in its course. And then when that happens, the patients have a far better outcome.
Yeah, you mentioned the environment, what's going on around you, maybe having some, some type of effect on that. And I even hear about people kind of leaving the north, right, to get out of the cold. You mentioned heat, right, going down to the south. Does that tend to help?
Yeah, so patients with rheumatoid arthritis in particular, and other kinds of arthritis too, routinely talk about three things that seem to make their arthritis worse. One is stress, another is diet changes, and the third is weather. And so I previously practiced in Wisconsin, and we lost a lot of our patients to Texas and Florida as people got older with their arthritis and moved to southern states because they were more comfortable in the warmth.
Yeah. That has to do with weather, so I was going to ask you about that. Doc White, really appreciate you being with us today, and thanks for your insight. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Guide dogs that don't need kibble or a walk in the park. Georgia Tech researchers are working on a high-tech companion for the visually impaired, a robot guide dog that could someday lead the way, literally. Let's dig into how all this works. Professor Bruce Walker of the Georgia Tech's School of Interactive Computing joins us now. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
All right. What makes this robot guide dog different from existing tools like a cane, a walking cane, or smartphone navigation apps?
Well, this is a research project that really is pushing the boundaries. We're trying to figure out what are the possible capabilities of an assistive robot that can sense its surroundings, know where it is, know what's in front of it and behind it, help a person get from place to place, and tell you that there's a Starbucks around the corner.
Wow, we're looking at some video right now, so it's already built, obviously, and you're going through the trials of it. Guide dogs are normally known for their loyalty and trust. How do you build that into a machine?
Well, in some ways we don't, and we want this to be seen as a tool. In other ways, we absolutely do. The robot has a virtual agent inside it, so it has it can communicate with the person, and the way we design that communication can cause the person to feel more or less trust. We want it to sound and be authoritative, know where it is, and listen to the owner, ask where it should be going. So it's a partnership between the person and the robot.
Yeah, we understand you talked to people who are blind or visually impaired when you were designing this, and what did they have to say about a robotic guide?
Well, just like you'd expect, some are all on board and some are happy to have their existing dog or cane. So for those who might be interested in this kind of technology, we ask them all the deep questions. What should it sound like? What should it look like? What should it feel like? How should it move? We noticed things that the robots that we use for this are manufactured by a third-party company. Mm-hmm. They tend to make a lot of noise. They're very noisy. And the participants, the blind individuals we spoke with said, no, this thing's got to be quiet. So we listened to them very carefully and try to put as many of their suggestions into play in what we design. Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's really good insight right there. How do you avoid, in real time, avoiding hazards or, a busy crossing street? How do you avoid that? Is this like what we have in like cars now that are on the roads? Well, there's two things to think about. First of all, we come at this project under the assumption that the human is still in charge. Just like with an existing dog, a real dog, that is assisting a blind person getting across the street, it's the human that is in charge and the dog is an assistant. We are not trying to flip that script. So this is another pair of eyes and ears and radar or LiDAR that can provide information to the user, but the individual is really still the boss. Having said that, as you pointed out, we have technology now that can sense surroundings, identify objects, oncoming cars, other pedestrians, and use that to help guide the person on a path or provide them with information about when to go and when not to go.
Yeah. Does the robotic dog have a name, one specific name, or will they get names?
Well, I was a big fan of Astro, but that just shows my age with the Jetsons. But we're not actually building a commercial product. Yeah. We have to recognize this is a research effort, and someone smarter than me would do the marketing to figure out what an eventual product ought to be called. And
I got you.
We'll go from there.
Yep. Professor Bruce Walker, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Welcome back to the show. Atlanta Housing is rolling out something new, scooters that don't just get you to work, they are creating work. It's the first of its kind partnership giving residents cheaper rides and real job opportunities, all aimed at helping families move forward. Here to tell us more about this partnership is Kelly English, Chief of Staff for Atlanta Housing. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, what makes this partnership the first of its kind for the nation, and why did Atlanta Housing want to lead the way?
Well, I'll tell you, here in Atlanta, we have this phrase that we love that says Atlanta influences everything. And so, as you know, Atlanta is the birthplace of affordable housing. Atlanta is also the home city of the first site where African Americans were allowed to reside in public housing. Atlanta is also the innovator of mixed income public housing. And now, as of yesterday, Atlanta is influencing everything again. We are the first city to pair affordable housing with micromobility.
And how does it work for us? Tell us how it works.
Yes, absolutely. So for the 27,000 families that Atlanta Housing serves, we're talking about roughly 43,000 people. They all have access to deeply discounted codes with Bird. So you know Bird as the e-scooter and e-bike company that you've seen around as people are moving around on the Beltline, taking that last mile to MARTA or to their offices. And so now Atlanta Housing residents will be able to join them in those streets with 50% off as registered Atlanta Housing residents with Bird through their Access program. In addition, we have 10 designated zones that are adjacent to Atlanta Housing properties where they don't even have to be registered. If they initiate their ride from one of those zones, there's an automatic 20% discount from there. And that's not even the part that excites me the most. The best part is that our residents will now have access to jobs with the Bird Company. They will be hosting quarterly job fairs for our residents where we can get them on the path to self-sufficiency through programs like being Bird ambassadors, participating in their maintenance and repair program, joining the Bird Street team. So we are calling this our Ride to Work program, and we literally mean that. We've got rides for our residents, we've got work for our residents, and we are incredibly grateful to Bird for their partnership.
Sounds very exciting. You mentioned 50% off, and you mentioned another 20% off. Realistically, how much will this save, the discount ride will save a person each month?
Well, let me put it to you this way. The average family in Atlanta Housing residents have an income of $17,000. So we are literally talking about people who are making decisions about whether or not to pay their rent, whether or not to eat food. These are not both ands, these are ifs, right? And so if we can cut down any savings, if we can keep any money in their pockets and get them to work, to doctor's appointments, to a grocery store that may not be walkable, it's not even about financial savings. We're really talking about life savings here.
Yeah. Do you have a ballpark figure of how many residents you expect to benefit from this?
Yeah, so our hope is that they will all participate. They are all eligible, whether you live in an Atlanta Housing property or whether you live throughout the city as part of our Housing Choice program. If you are a participant with Atlanta Housing, you are eligible. And so my hope is that any resident on the other side of my voice who is watching this interview, I hope that you will see this. I hope that you will join us on October 9th at Roosevelt Hall. We will be registering residents. We will be signing them up for the program and getting them in the pipeline for the job fair. So my hope is that I can come back to you next year and tell you that we had 27,000 families moving around on Bird e-bikes and scooters.
I'm going to hold you to it.
All right, let's do it.
All right, Kelly English, thanks so much for joining us. And thanks. Much success to your program. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
A Georgia mom turned a near tragedy into a statewide mission, helping to change the state's car seat laws. And now she's teaching kids with a brand new book. Doug Turnbull joins us now on the set to talk about this and all that's going on. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Chesley. Good to have you back, by the way. And look, we hear about near tragedies all the time, and a lot of times, Chesley, they end in a terrible way where somebody dies, and a lot of people try to make good come out of these things. Well, Jenny Hardy is an Alpharetta mom, and I wrote about this in Gridlock Guy. You can find it at 11alive.com this week. She's an Alpharetta mother who saw her daughter almost die in a crash. They were hit by a logging truck in 2002 in rural Georgia on the way to Lake Sinclair, to or from it. And what they were told by doctors, Chesley, is that if she hadn't been in a booster seat, she would have died. And so Madison's her name. She was really banged up in that crash. And immediately her mom didn't wait and say, oh, phew, and then, let's go out to eat. She survived. No, instead what she did, Chesley, is she decided to become an advocate for child passenger safety. In fact, this is National Child Passenger Safety Week. And so she started out on a mission just trying to get Georgia's booster law strengthened. Back in 2002, which to you and me doesn't seem like that long ago, but it was 23 years. Back then, children 4 and over didn't even have to be in a booster seat. You go straight for the car seat, get buckled right in to your seat. Well, because Madison was in one, she survived. So they eventually, through a series of laws, the first of which in 2004 became Madison's Law, named after Jenny's daughter, they were able to strengthen them. And then in 2011, the rule now is anybody under age 8 or that's 50, I think it's 54 or 57 inches or below, that you have to be into that. So you have to be in a booster seat. Yeah. And there are also rules about sitting in the front seat or not. So that's what she's been doing through then. Her advocacy since has led her become the Montlake Injury Attorney's Director of Community Relations. They brought her in to run their I Ride Safe program. She's a certified child car seat. It's a different word, but a child car seat technician. Yeah. And now she's written a book to tell the story. And that's the next chapter. You probably find, especially an 8-year-old or 7-year-old, let's say a 6-year-old that says, oh, I'm big enough, I'm old enough, I don't need the seat, those kind of pressures maybe for parents. How do they encourage their kids to stay in that seat? For sure. So that's actually the heart of this book. This book is called Francie and Fitz Booster Buddies. And Fitz, there's a picture of it, is this guy named after, by the way, she's a Buffalo Bills fan, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Okay, sorry, Eagles fan. But Fitz is about to go with Francie to the lake. And Fitz realizes that she's in a booster seat and he's not, and she can see more things out of the car. So it's a way to encourage children, hey, you're not a little kid or a dork or something because you're in a booster seat, and it's to encourage parents too. So this book's available both at Barnes & Noble and Amazon, and she's partnering with other safety organizations to distribute it. And not only is it for kids, but this book also has notes for parents on how to educate your kids and make it better. We're going to have a package running later this week on 11Alive talking a little more in depth about this. But I want to note, too, that this Saturday, at Ed Voiles Honda on Cobb Parkway, Jenny Hardy and her team at Montlake, along with several others from the organization Safe Kids, are actually going to be doing free car seat checks Saturday morning, 10 a.m. to cap off Child Passenger Safety Week. So you can go there and make sure, because Jenny said, Chesley, you're ready for numbers, you love stats, being a meteorologist, 3/4 of all booster seats or child seats are somehow improperly installed. Wow. And so she can help people learn. Yeah, it's got to be important to you as well. I know you see a lot of crashes covering, the traffic here around the area. This is very important for parents to know. It certainly is. Yeah. A lot of people, DOT's told me over the years, it's alarmingly high how many adults don't buckle up properly. And then think about those habits you learn as a child. If you as a parent don't teach your kid to buckle up and be safe, they're going to be less safe of a driver. So even if they don't get hurt when they're 4 or 7, 9 years old, you could be hurt later on if you don't have that habit. Very good point, Doug Terman. Hey, appreciate you, Chesley. Good to be on. My guy right here, folks. Love to see you, man. Thanks for coming on. Good to be here. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. Global Ministries, the humanitarian arm of the United Methodist Church, is known for its work from more than 100 countries. But now its relief arm is stepping up here in the United States, from wildfire recovery in California to rebuilding after Hurricane Helene right here in Georgia. Let's talk more about how the mission is changing and what it means for families right here with Global Ministries General Secretary Roland Fernandez. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, what's the single largest way Global Ministries mission has shifted in the past few months as the government aid has been cut back a little bit here?
We have been trying to continue to support our biblical mandate to welcome the stranger, feed the hungry, and care for the sick. And with all the shifts that have happened in foreign aid, there's been estimated over the next 5 years up to 14 million people, could die because of that, and many of them children. And so with many cuts, it's up to the private and faith-based organizations to support this need. And so Global Ministries is focusing, along with our sister agency, Higher Education and Ministry, on 5 expanded areas of focus. That's agriculture and food security, education and ministry, global health, migration, and peace and justice work.
How have you guys been doing that? Like, obviously, the government is starting to shut back, but you guys are now saying you're going to start amping up. How does that work?
I want to say, of course, that we are not going to be able to do what is going to be lost with the government shutting down the aid. But we are working primarily with healthcare organizations, colleges and universities, and struggling communities to ensure people across the world have access. And so we do it primarily by working with our partners, both here in the United States and around the world as well.
Yeah. How are you guys protecting partners on the ground while delivering food and basic supplies in conflict zones?
Well, we, of course, the big conflict zone, of course, is at this moment the situation in Gaza, where we're working through our partners. And so obviously it's a very different situation there, but we continue to work through our partners wherever possible. In some places it's not possible to get there because of conflict, but as far as possible, we work in as much as we can with partners who have access in these different areas.
Yeah. Talk to me about when disaster strikes, how do you guys mobilize? How do you set all that up?
Well, so it depends on which part of the world we are in. So in the United States, we work primarily through a network of United Methodist conferences, so that regional bodies to work with, they have disaster coordinators there. And in the international sphere, we work with different partners on the ground. We also have disaster management offices in a few parts in the world where we work with them locally in those contexts as well.
Yeah. What separates you guys from what people may expect from like FEMA or a Red Cross organization?
Well, we are a church-based organization. Our income comes from our members of our churches, and we also work a lot through our church partners and, of course, with others as well. But that's the big difference is, of course, FEMA is government-funded money. Ours all comes from United Methodist Church membership, who are really giving to the work that we do in response to many of these disasters and other humanitarian crises.
Yeah. How long do you guys stay involved? Like, for example, when we talk about a disaster that strikes or whatever, the headlines start to fade away. How long do you guys stay in there, and when do you say it's done for a community? What does that look like?
Obviously, it's, there's no specific timeline for each particular case, but we do stay there for a while. For example, this week marks the one-year anniversary of Hurricane Helene, and UMCOR volunteers are still assisting residents in Western North Carolina and Georgia as they rebuild after that devastating hurricane. So I think so there's no timeline, but we stay well after most of these disasters are out of the news. Yeah. In some other places internationally, we've stayed for years to help with the rebuilding efforts.
You mentioned Helene is coming up on a year now. In fact, this week, it's Friday, as a matter of fact, a year when Helene hit. Are you guys still down there, still working in that particular area, especially in South Georgia?
We do have UMCOR volunteers currently in Western North Carolina and also in Georgia helping rebuild after the hurricane.
What does that look like now for you guys?
Well, it's hopefully it's there's a lot of progress that's happened, but there's still a lot more to be done. It's the devastation was pretty significant, as you know, so it's still an ongoing process, and we'll continue to be there as long as we can.
Yeah, yeah. You said you get your monies from members. Are outsiders able to give to the cause?
Yes, outsiders are able to give as well, through umcmission.org. We have a lot of people who support United Methodist Committee on Relief, and I work at Global Ministries, through who are not members of the church, because again, they appreciate the work that's being done. I also will say that we also work with everyone when we respond to a disaster, even though the money does come from United Methodist members. We do work with everybody because obviously humanitarian crisis affects everyone, not just people of a particular faith.
Yeah, Mr. Fernandez, I don't know if you've heard this, but most people, when disaster strikes, you get a lot of inquiries about giving money, and people want to know where that money goes to. Could you look at our viewers right now and tell them if they give, where the money goes to?
Well, the money goes to where it's most needed. And so, we work with partners both here in the United States, as I said, in almost all the states through our disaster response coordinators and around the world as well. And we also have strong accountability systems to make sure that the money that is given is used for the purpose that it is given for, and comply with all the different compliance and other requirements that we have. So there's clear transparency in what we do, and we're really glad that we are supported by so many and look forward to others supporting us as well.
Roland Fernandez, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for what you do for our community.
This industry has been so good to me. You guys have been so good to me. This radio station has been so good to me. But after 25 years, I am at peace with leaving radio. And with that, the Bert Show is going to come to an end on October 24th.
Wow. Wow, that was on Tuesday when Atlanta DJ Bert Weiss announced that he was stepping away from the microphone and hanging up his headphones. He's been a part of Atlanta mornings for a long time, 2.5 decades of laughter, honesty, and conversations that helped shape the rhythm of the city. And Bert, he's joining us right now. Take a look at, reflect on what has been and what the future holds for him. Bert, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Chesley, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Sad moment for me, at least. We shared a lot.
Yeah.
When you look back at the start of the Bert Show, that was back in 2001, did you ever imagine that it would be this big and long lasting?
Oh my God, no. Man, when we signed on, this signal, Q100, was a brand new signal in Atlanta from Anniston, Alabama. We literally had 0 listeners, and we had 3,000 watts. Now, the biggest radio stations in Atlanta and the United States have like 50,000 watts. We had 3,000. So to give you an idea of how small our signal was, the radio station is in Sandy Springs, and I live in Sandy Springs, about 3 miles from the radio station, and I couldn't set my radio alarm to this radio station because I couldn't get it in my house. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
So I would have never thought that after all these years we'd still be here.
Yeah. No, I mean, how did you come to this particular decision? I mean, obviously, the business is changing a lot. I don't know if that has something to do with it, but how did you come to this decision?
The decision to take off from radio?
Yes.
I just felt like, after 25 years, I sort of have always lived this life of performance, even before I was in radio. I think my self-worth a lot of times, Chesley, most times has come from adulation. So it makes a lot of sense that I got into radio, into a field where it's ratings and now it's about likes and all that. And I kind of feel like I'm shedding a new skin at this point in my life. And I just don't get the same juice out of that. And I'm looking for something a little bit more authentic for myself, to be honest with you.
Wow. A lot of people would disagree with you. You know that.
About which part?
About you leaving, about you shedding a new skin. They want you to stick around, man.
Yeah, I thought about it for a while, and this is something I've been thinking about for a while. And while I do love performing, especially with this cast, man, I mean, this is one of the greatest jobs. I mean, I get paid to come in here and make jokes and hang out with my friends. But I just think that, I'm 58 years old. My real love is traveling, and I'm young enough now to where I can travel and I can do all the things I want to do. I can hike, I can swim, I can go wherever I want. And I just thought the longer that I do this, as you get older, it's more challenging to do stuff like that. So I want to go live life on my terms, and that's what this is really allowing me to do.
What do you think made your show so unique, right, compared to other morning drives?
Yeah, I think that we were really authentic. We were vulnerable, and we were talking about things in our lives that were kind of messy. We were having a really great time and doing really stupid radio things. But I think outside of that, I think being vulnerable and having real talks about divorce, about co-parenting, about troubles with drug use, maybe alcohol, race relations. We have been open to talking about it all, and I think that was pretty unique at the time.
Yeah, you've interviewed countless celebrities. Who surprised you the most, good or bad?
That's always a really great question. I will tell you the one that has had the most impact on me now has been Usher. Last time we had him in, the first time Usher and I had an interview together, it got very contentious, long story. But 20 years later, he comes in the studio, shakes my hand and says, I just want to let you know, after that very first interview that we had all those years ago, show was sort of a contributing factor to one of the greatest albums ever in all-time history.
Wow. Wow. So you've had effect on many people's lives, man. I don't know if you remember this or not, but when I first came here, and I came in 2009, I said on the air, Hot Atlanta. And you were the first person to call me and say, hey, we don't call it Hot Atlanta anymore. just to let you know, if you're going to be around, we don't call it Hot Atlanta anymore. And here we are. right? You had me on the show
I do remember that. Man, we had a campaign to stop saying Hot Atlanta, and clearly it did not work, Chesley.
Well, you helped me out, because I've never said it again, and I'm still here. Man, we are really going to miss you. Now, you said your show you're going to be on until when? October when?
October 24th is going to be our last day.
You got some big stuff planned between now and then?
I'll be honest with you. These guys have a lot of surprises. The last thing that I wanted was like a month-long victory lap. The things that I really wanted for the last month of this show was to take a lot of calls and read DMs and stuff from people that we've really had an effect on. I think when you do something this long, you want to know that it's been more than just laughs and superficial. Like, how have we changed people's lives? And for 25 years, you know, with Bert's Big Adventure and so many other things that we've done around Atlanta and Georgia, that's really what I want to focus on, is how we have really helped people in their day-to-day.
Yeah, we're going to get a lot of calls for that. I can tell you that right now. Bert, really appreciate you, man, and all that you've done for my career. You can still call me, even though you're not going to be on the air, about winter weather. You can call me. I'll let you know.
I will wake up in the morning and go, dude, I'm about to go for a run. What's the weather look like this morning in Sandy Springs? So
I got you.
Don't invite me, because I'll do it.
I got you. You're my man. Thanks a lot, Bert. Really appreciate it, man. Thanks for all you've done for our community as well, and all that you're going to continue to do.
Thank you for everything also, Chesley. You've been great.
All right. Take care, man. Another sign that computers are taking over. Yep. Major League Baseball has announced that they will be using robot umpires for the 2026 baseball season. Oh, boy. Yeah, they're not replacing the human plate umpires, at least not yet. The real umpires will continue to call balls and strikes, but teams have an opportunity to challenge at least 2 calls per game. The latest statistics show that human umpires are currently 94% correct when they call balls and strikes. That's pretty good, right? So why the need for robots? Well, according to the league, it will cut back on players and coaches being ejected from the game. 61.5% of the players and managers and coaches are ejected from the game related to the calls of balls and strikes. And that's high. This year was just as high, about 60.3%. So although it may lead to managers and coaches stop throwing equipment at the umpires and on the field, my question remains, folks. How long will it be before robots take over the entire game? I'm not looking forward to that at all. But maybe this will help out with some of the arguments that go on. I like some of those too, don't you? That's all we got for you today, folks. Make it a great one.